Good evening and welcome everyone. We are holding in the laws of meat and dairy, and we'll discuss today baking bread, baking dairy bread, or baking meat bread. So the rabbis prohibited to knead a dough or any types of bread like rolls, baguettes, pitas, the like, to do it together with dairy or with milk or dairy products. And similarly, they said they prohibited baking bread together with meat or other meat products because of the concern that you might make a mistake and eat the bread with the other species. You would eat bread with a dairy product. If it's meat bread, you might eat with dairy product, or vice versa. If it's a dairy bread, you would eat it by mistake with meat bread. So therefore, you should not knead a dough that is together with dairy product or meat product. In other words, do not make a dairy bread or meat bread. You're allowed to knead and bake dairy product or meat product in one of the three ways. So every rule has the exception to the rule, and the rule was do not make meat bread or dairy bread. Which way you're allowed to do it? Three ways. Number one, if you're baking a small amount of, let's say, dairy bread, small amount that will be sufficient for the meal of your household for that day. Meal of your household for that day. Let's say your family eats a loaf of bread a day. You're not allowed to make more than one loaf of dairy bread. Number two, if you're making this dairy bread or meat bread with a special shape, so this will remind you that it's either meat bread or dairy bread, and you would not eat it with the other species. That's two. Number three, if it's recognizable or noticeable, or it's marked that it's dairy bread or meat bread. For example, if you sprinkled on top of the bread before the baking cheese crumbs or meat crumbs, so this way when you see the bread, you know, oh, this is cheese bread or this is meat bread. So we have this. If you insistingly you want to make a dairy bread or meat bread, the way to do it is a small amount that will be sufficient for your family and yourself for that day. And condition number two is you have to make a special shape to it, that it'll be obvious. You'll remember that this is you know exactly what it is. And stipulation number three is condition number three is that you can see from the outside what it is, meat or dairy bread. If you by mistake made a larger quantity, more than the quantity allowed that it would be sufficient for you and your family for that day, you did not do any change in the bread, you didn't make any change in the bread, you made too much and didn't make a change in the bread, so it looks like regular bread, but you know that it's dairy or meat bread, you're not allowed to eat this bread, and even to eat by itself without meat or dairy, you're not allowed to eat this bread, and it does not help you to create a different shape, unique shape, after it was already baked. Once it's baked, it's over. You can't do the change already. You can't mark it anymore, and it doesn't help you also to start now distributing it to a lot of people so that they should finish it on that day. And so this is the law regarding a meat or dairy bread. Halachically, you shouldn't be doing it. And if you insistently want to do it, that's one of the three ways. Small amount, recognizable, and you have to put also special shape, and you have to put crumbs on top. If you didn't do it initially this way, you're not allowed to do it. And why? Because of the concern that people mistakenly would eat dairy bread with meat or vice versa. So this is the halacha for today. And I'm going to make another video on the daily Tanya, and then another video on the Parsha, and then a video of En Yaakov. Bruchim Tiu, and I will see you shortly.